Okay, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're logging in from. Welcome to the Yale SOM Alumni of Color Perspectives panel. We're thrilled to have you all with us and looking forward to a really engaging next hour. So thank you for joining us. My name is Kristen Byers, and I am really privileged to serve as the Director for Community and Inclusion at the Yale School Management. I use the pronouns she, her, hers. And the C&I team really focuses on a few key ways to really elevate diversity, equity, and inclusion on campus. And one of the most fun parts about the job is that we get to work with both prospective students and help you all as you're thinking about the MBA and where that fits into your career plan. And then we get to work with increasing the student diversity of our population, and then also work with you as a student if you decide to come to Yale in terms of building a welcoming community that we all want to be part of. And so this event in particular is one of a series of events that we're doing this fall called Diversity at Yale SOM. And they're really highlighted to give you different glimpses into the Yale SOM experience. And I would say there's many disadvantages to what's going on right now in the global pandemic, of course, but one of the few silver linings is that we're able to have an event like this and bring together such a talented group of alumni that are all over the country and doing different things. And so really excited to be able to have them share their expertise and their experiences and perspectives with you all. And I'm also super excited to introduce Amy Rosnewski, one of our faculty members who will be moderating this conversation and I think has a good knowledge of most of these panelists. So I think it'll be a pleasure for her to be able to enjoy this conversation with her former students. So Amy, I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Kristen. And I really appreciate that. And I am thrilled to be here. As Kristen said, I knew them when they had first arrived on our campus and have had the privilege of teaching nearly every person on this panel in at least 2 core courses. And so it's a delight for me to be reunited with them, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I am a faculty member here at the School of Management in the Organizational Behavior Group. This is my 15th year on the faculty, and I am delighted to be joined by all of you and to be reunited with these graduates of our institution who are doing incredible things out in the world, ranging in everything from global development, software, tech, education, economic development. They run a wide range of very interesting things that they have done since they have graduated from our institution, and they've all been reflecting on what their experience was like while they were here at Yale SOM. And so I want to spend our time really hearing from them, talking with them. I have lots of questions for them, and I imagine you do too. And so we invite you to put those questions into the chat as they occur to you or as you think about things you'd like to hear them weigh in on. But what I'd like to do at this point is to have them introduce themselves. Tony, if we could start with you, if you could just say a little bit about yourself, and we'll go through the group that way, and then we'll dive right into some questions.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy. Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Lynn. I graduated from the full-time MBA program in 2014. I'm originally from Florida, but I spent my professional career in Washington, D.C. Prior to SOM, I actually worked in politics, worked on Capitol Hill, worked for the Obama campaign, worked at the Obama White House for the first 4 years, and went to Yale 2012. Actually made the decision to transfer into to career switch, which I'm sure a lot of you all are thinking about, into management consulting, which I did for 4 years. And then about 2.5 years ago, I actually transitioned into tech. I work for Facebook. I'm a global program manager. And what that means is I actually manage the entire global Instagram small business, meaning that I manage all the marketing, sales, data science that occurs for us to really grow the business on Instagram amidst small business customers. So very excited to talk to you. I'm actually also on the Yale Alumni Advisory Board, so I get an opportunity to give back and really contribute to the prosperity of the school on a pretty constant, regular basis. And I look forward to engaging with you.
Great. Thank you, Tony. If we could, Bernie, would you go next?
Yes, happy to speak. Hello, everybody. My name is Bernie Lordin. I am a 2017 graduate of also the full-time MBA program at SOM. I'm originally from New Jersey and spent my career before SOM primarily in finance. So worked in the insurance space to be specific, but also had some experience also in the nonprofit sector, specifically in education. Post MBA, or since I've left Yale, which is crazy, it's been already 3 years. I also was a management consultant, first coming out of school at Bain in San Francisco, and then have actually recently left and I'm back in the world of education and now ed tech. I work for a company called Lambda School. It's a startup. We focus on upskilling communities to skills in data science and computer science. So we're more of a software development engineering program, all online and remote. And I do corporate strategy there, essentially. And so I've been there for about 5 months and really enjoying it so far. So look forward to also contributing on this panel with the great set of alumni. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Becca, could we turn to you next?
Absolutely. It's so great to be here with Amy. So many fond memories of SOM and your classes and your research I still reference today. So I'm Becca Sharp. I, before SOM, worked in global development. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I served in Central Asia. I went on to work at an international nonprofit and became really interested in the research side of things, global developments, kind of evidence-based and data-driven movement. And so I did that actually in graduate school as a joint degree. So at Yale SOM, I graduated in 2015, but it took me 3 years because I also did a master's in public affairs at the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs. We renamed ourselves, so I have to remind myself, which was great. So at Yale, I took advantage of not only the fantastic management curriculum, but also these incredible global development professors and Innovations for Poverty Action, which was right next door in New Haven. And that was an incredible experience. I was a research associate for Mushfiq Mubarak. So really just had a fantastic time. Afterwards, like many of my distinguished colleagues here, I went into management consulting against perhaps my better judgment for myself and realized that I'm actually a very execution-oriented person. So happy to talk more about that transition. I'm now the COO of ID Insight, which is a global advisory nonprofit. And we do data and evidence, helping global development practitioners maximize their impact with cutting edge data tools. So a good fit for sort of my previous background and all of the organizational management skills that I learned at SOM. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yuli, can we turn to you next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Newsome, and I'm a graduate of SOM in 2009. So it is tough to believe that it's been a decade or over a decade, but I guess the numbers don't lie. I'm originally from New York. I'm originally from, went into performing arts, but then joined the military as a medic because frankly, I just had no idea what I would do at college, and first generation college had no idea how I would wind up paying for it. I was a medic, did minor surgeries, immunizations, general health care, and then I had a doctor who encouraged me to go and get my degree. And so I went and became a nuclear engineer on submarines, and I was stationed out in Guam for 4 years. Then came back and I taught naval engineering and naval weapons systems at MIT for a bit. And that was before coming to SOM. And I absolutely adored SOM because of all the experiences that I had, the community, the courses, of course, and then went and worked not in management consulting, but I worked at Dow Chemical, and I was the chief of staff for the chief operating officer and the chief financial officer there. And then left there and started a nonprofit myself to help military families transition to civilian careers. Then worked at a tech company in ed tech, helping college kids start their careers. So we called ourselves the LinkedIn for college kids. It was a handshake. And then from there worked at another startup that helped helped employees with mental health So using cognitive behavioral therapy to help employees with insomnia, depression, and anxiety. And that was before coming to Salesforce, where I am now, where I focus on the healthcare and life sciences space to help them with starting to use a lot of technology to make it easier for healthcare workers to provide health care to patients.
Thank you, Yuli. And last but certainly not least, Lindsay, if we could turn to you next.
Yeah, hi everybody. Happy Thursday. I've been struggling with what day of the week it is, so I keep repeating it on every call I get on. But I am originally from DC. I live in New York now, in Brooklyn. Pre-SOM, I worked in finance at Goldman Sachs for a long time. 6 years I did half investment banking, half real estate private equity. Left that, went into food startups for a while. It was a very interesting odyssey. I felt like I was working inside of a bunch of the OB cases that I read. Not as fun to work there, way better to read about them. And then I took a break from that and ended up having not left to work for one of my old bosses from Goldman, who was deputy mayor at the time for housing and economic development in the city of New York. And so I'm basically still within that same family. I moved over, I was in City Hall originally in the mayor's office, and I did that for like 5 years and change. And then I moved over 2 weeks before COVID to be the chief strategy officer at the Economic Development Corporation. And so the job I was hired to do is not the job I've been doing. So I have a lot of context to share about that, but we went from sort of being a policy arm to an execution arm. We helped stand up all the local manufacturing of medical supplies and equipment for the city's COVID response. That was my team that did that. We're still doing that. We're still doing like testing strategy and a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm now doing like 40% COVID response and like 60% economic recovery planning. So it's a really interesting time, and I'm still kind of doing my job at City Hall because they never really backfilled me, and you know, the mayor knows my name, which is both a gift and a curse. Anyway, here I am.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
So much. We're thrilled that you're here, and that they have someone like you on this response, because it's quite a time in the country. Lindsay, actually, my first question is for you, and it's a nice one to, I think, open up with, because it gives us an opportunity to think about the connection between your time at SOM and the time that you've traveled sort of since then, and the places you've been since then. And that is, you know, if you reflect on the kinds of topics that you studied or the experiences that you had at SOM, which ones would you say have aided you the most in recent years, and how has that changed since you've graduated?
It's interesting. So I think most of the things I ended up dwelling on were things I picked up from you and your colleagues in the OB departments, and I've sort of had different emphasis on them over time. I think I can't remember which core class it is. It was Rodrigo taught it when I was there. But Innovator. Thank you, Amy. Cobwebs up here. But the whole concept that like how you structure your people and structure your work has a direct impact on the success of your organization, and how you incentivize your people. If it's really misaligned from the thing you want them to actually accomplish, it's just gonna kind of all go to crap. So I was living and breathing a lot of that my first few years at the various food startups. You know, I was responsible for a gross profit margin, but I was told by my boss that I spent too much time in operations, which controlled my costs, and they didn't report to me. So it was like, how's that supposed to work?
Yeah.
Like, you want me to sell prepared foods and the guys are telling me the oven's broken? How's that not my problem? So it was a lot of those questions. And then I think since I've gotten into policy work in the government, it's been so much about, I found myself really thinking through my experience with Heidi in interpersonal dynamics, because so much about politics is solving for emotional feelings. Like the way people experience and perceive a policy is a lot of what you have to contend with. Like there may be the like quote unquote rational thing, like obviously this is a good idea, but if no one believes it's a good idea, then it doesn't matter. And so you have to actually solve for how people will experience and perceive a thing that you're trying to do. So that's been a really important revelation, and that combined with honestly problem framing and just constantly having to switch, and the whole concept of the core, right? Constantly having to switch which like hat you're wearing while you're thinking about a problem, because sometimes it's like the only way through what feels like sort of an impossible situation. And then now as a manager in these very strange times, just trying to really go back to the notion that like, especially with all of the time we spent grappling, I'm sure many of my colleagues did, with the impact of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's killings and the racial justice tensions, and talking through that with your organization, being a leader in that space, particularly as a person of color, but trying to navigate through an organization's intention to do right, but how they say it and how they communicate it has a very different experience, right? Like, just because you didn't intend something to come across a certain way doesn't mean the other person didn't experience it that way. Right. And how you manage that and try to coach people through that and deal with it, particularly as a leadership team versus like someone who's experiencing it staff. So again, all the toolkit I got from OB, but I access different parts of it at different times.
Thank you for that. And it's, as for those of you who are with us on the call, OB is organizational behavior, which is essentially everything about kind of how people relate to their work, to each other, to the organization, how teams function, how conflict and communication happens, how strategy gets played out, and so on, is sort of the purview of that faculty group and the courses that we teach. And so I'm thrilled to hear that there was so much that was has been useful, and different things useful at different stages as you've moved through the postgraduate part of your career so far. So thank you for that. I want to turn next, and I see we're getting some questions in the chat, and I'm tracking that, and we'll come to those in a moment. But I want to next turn to Bernie, if I could, because you had referenced, Lindsay, the challenges around trying to manage what's happening societally right now in the U.S. in particular. I mean, what's been happening, but has received sort of additional attention over the last several months. But it's been an issue, for time immemorial, and that is to bring up sort of questions about diversity at the school. And so, Bernie, my question for you is, what, in your experience, do you think makes the SOM community unique from a DEI, a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, versus if you had to think about peer schools that some of our attendees tonight might be thinking about as they think about the path ahead?
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, it's a great question. Something I was dwelling on a lot when making my decision to come to Yale, even after, I'm sure some of you are in probably different stages of your journey. Some of you might be very early. Some of you may be actually coming up to that stage where you're actually thinking about what is the right choice for me. This was something I was dwelling on a lot. I think a few things that stood out to me about the SOM community that felt different. One is, I think there's a notion of, we talk about this first, is just, of course, the mission of the school and the type of students that I think SOM tends to attract. I think you're seeing it from the panel that we have here, just a really, really broad spectrum of people who have a super diverse set of interests. Obviously, a lot of other programs do as well, but I think one of the things that was distinct to me was just the diversity of background and thought that was brought into the program for it being a relatively smaller MBA program. I think, it was just like so interesting. The types of conversations you would have at like a welcome weekend at SOM was very different than the types of conversations at other MBA programs. And that's something you can only see as you experience and meet more people in the program. So I encourage everybody here, as you're doing your research, to just, you're doing the right thing here, join this panel, but also speak to students, current students, alumni, and you'll get a sense of that from the community in terms of the type of people SOM attracts. I think not only just diverse in, again, many facets, but also diversity of thought, interest. You hear, again, connected to the mission, people that care about what's going on in the world in a different way than I felt like a lot of other programs. So that was something that was super important to me. The other thing I would call out a lot of people, and I fell into this trap when I first thought of it. It was like, okay, SOM is a smaller program. Therefore, the number of quote unquote people of color will likely be smaller than some other larger programs, which is actually, by doing the math, is normally true. If you cut the numbers in that way. One of the things that I realized for me, and again, everybody will have to make a personal choice on it, but the more I reflected and I got closer to making the decision, what I felt was actually more important to me was of course a school that was focused on increasing access and focusing on diversity, and of course that was really important. But what was the other, the non-person of color perspective at the school, right? So did I feel comfortable with the larger student body? Did I feel like I could be myself, regardless of who I was talking to? Did I feel like the only way I could be myself in that program is if I was in the consortium group or the Black business group, or, a very small subset of a community where I was like, okay, this community is great, but everybody else, not so sure. The more I really thought about that decision, and the more I really tested that, again, when I went to multiple events, it was clear to me that Yale, for me, was a place where I really felt like I could be myself with, pretty much everybody who I met. It was just some type of spark, some type of connection, even though we might come from completely different backgrounds and different parts of the world, mostly. There's just like some shared kind of intuition when you talked, like, oh, okay, you're interested in that, you're interested in this. That really felt different to me, again, from a lot of the experiences at other places. So these are things I keep in mind when I give advice to other students. It's think about what your experience is like in totality. Don't think about just, a certain number or percentage. And then also think about the types of students that programs tend to attract and where you feel like you can be kind of your true self. So those would be my pieces of advice for current prospective students.
That's really well positioned in the flow of the conversation, but also in my own experience. So, I joked at the beginning, like, oh, I knew them all when they first sort of arrived at SOM. But now, having been here for 15 years, it is striking to me how many of our students say that it was, whether it was welcome weekend or a visit to the campus or some opportunity to be having conversations with our students and to be in the community in some way, that they just knew. They knew this feels like home. This feels like a group of people I really want to spend time with. This feels like a community that I want to be a part of and that I want to continue to build. And so I'm thrilled to hear you say these things. And this, and again, those of you who are asking fabulous questions in the chat, we're going to come to that, but I want to first turn to Tony. I'm going to engage each of our august panelists with a question that I have tailored for them. And so, Tony, my question for you is, kind of takes the next step in terms of, Bernie's perspective going out into your career. How has your experience at SOM and its commitment to diversity prepared you to be a stronger D&I, diversity and inclusion advocate in the corporate setting in your own career?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that question. First, I just want to say I echo everything that's been said so far. The decision is always going to be a very difficult decision for you all. We're going to assume you're going to get into all your favorite schools, and it's going to be really tough when you're trying to make that call. But I do remember when I was in you guys' shoes, the commitment to diversity was a key differentiator. I met a lot of diverse alums along the path, and quite frankly, it was those diverse alums that convinced me to walk away from scholarships, full scholarships, to come to SOM. So I just want to start with that. But to answer your question, Amy, when I think about diversity from a educational standpoint, sure, there's the element of access and creating community. That's very important. But for me now, I guess I'm 6 years out of school. There's the practical application of the things that we've learned. And the thing that I like to say in these type of forums is that it's not necessarily just about that experience and helping you matriculate through the school and getting a sense of belonging. It's what skills are you building while you're in the school to become a strong asset to this cause when you leave. And, first, just to talk about Yale, and I'll transition really quickly and talk about my experiences subsequently. At SOM, there's a very distinct value proposition. It's about elevated leadership. It's about close connectivity to the rest of Yale and gaining some of those different educational assets from the different schools. And it's about being a distinctly global university. And all of those are the types of factors that's going to fold into your career after you graduate. Being able to think, context switch, be able to pull from a broad subset of different pieces of information, being able to think globally. And then the thing about SOM is that leadership is important, right? And what makes it so important, what makes it such an important competency of the school is that you're not just getting your MBA, you're getting a degree from Yale. And so for the rest of your life, for better or worse, the assumption is that you know what you're talking about in essentially all settings. And so your expectation isn't that you just know what you're talking about, it's that you're a leader. And we've kind of put our tent in the ground to say that you're not only just a leader for business, you're a leader for business and society, which is, you can see, 2020 hasn't taught us anything, it's taught us that there's a massive convergence between those two sectors. And the preparation for people to be able to thrive and succeed in both those sectors are not only a value add at this point, they're critical to global success for a nonprofit, for a for-profit, for a government entity. And SOM was just far ahead of the curve in really kind of building a school and an education system for that. And so I talk about how does SOM prepare you to lead in your career afterwards. What it does is it gives you the setting. You know, you're able to participate in programs like the consortium. We have several different on-campus programs that facilitate discussion around diversity, inclusion, and make sure that we find belonging together. It prepares you to lead, not only from a business context, but lead yourself. It instills the confidence and that cross-section of everything that is Yale. If you take advantage of it, you come out empowered. And so on a daily basis, I mentioned earlier that I work on the business side. My responsibility on a day-to-day basis is to grow the business of Facebook, specifically of Instagram. But the expectation when I walk into any room is that I also understand the broader context of a lot of things, such as lack of diversity in tech, lack of diversity in company, lack of diversity in management levels, historical inequities that's happened within Black communities, not only in the US, but globally. And the expectation that's bestowed, fair or unfair, is that I'm going to have an opinion on it because I come from a place where leadership is expected. And as a result of my SOM career, or my time at SOM, and fully utilizing all those different resources, I feel strong and confident to have those conversations. And I charge every single person who makes that decision on where they're going to go to B school. It's not only about the experience that you're really looking for over the next 2 years. It's really about what's the experience and what's the skills and what's the confidence and what's the expectation that you have for your career over the long haul. And you want to be able to walk into the boardroom, which is something I had to do last week, and say, hey, to people who are much more senior than me, and say, hey, you know, we're a great company, we're doing a lot of great things, but these metrics aren't great. And we know that as a society, we've seen over the past year that we have to solve these problems. So let's move from point A to point B. And so that's the one thing I would love to just really share, is that it not only gave me the experience within school, but it gave me the comfort, confidence, and competency to be able to drive these issues once I left.
Thank you for that, Tony. I think that to echo something that you've just said, one of the things, you know, so if the alumni who are here with us this evening have looked at other programs as they were making their decision about Yale, I've actually had the benefit of teaching in different business schools and getting to know their student bodies quite well. And they're all have been wonderful experiences, but something that is striking to me about Yale and the student community, and this has been consistent over the past decade and a half, and clearly before then as well, is how strong of a focus there is among our students about, to Tony's point, the long path ahead, the kinds of things that they want to try to make happen in the world, the kinds of things that they're committed to making happen in the world, are far more, I think, thought through, more deeply societal in nature, more deeply cross-sector in nature than you tend to see pretty much anywhere else that I'm aware of. And it just makes for a different community and a different set of conversations, a different set of questions and things that people are looking to push on, both while they're at Yale and then when they have left the institution as students. And it's extraordinary. And so I thank you for capturing so beautifully that element of what it means to be here. I want to again, for those of you who are waiting for a question to be brought out from the chat, that will come, but I want to make sure that I ask the next two questions that I have. So I'm going to turn to Becca next. And this picks up on the theme of kind of the long road ahead of you. You know, you're here for 2 years. It goes by in a blink of an eye. I can see it in our students' faces that each quarter feels like it's going faster than the one before, and then suddenly, you know, there you are out there in the world. If you think about the path post-MBA, Becca, what advice would you have for the people who've come here to be with us tonight or today about how to choose a job after graduation and beyond, right? So there's the first post-MBA job, and then there are all the decades that follow. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, well, I'd like to start with a very tactical piece of advice tailored to this group of prospective students, which is do not think that an MBA is a time for you to find yourself and that you're going to do all of the hard work of finding yourself in the MBA. You will be in for a rude awakening and surprise. You will show up week one and the CDO, who is very great at doing their job, the Career Development Office, will say, what's the internship that you want to go for? Go and do all of this training. We have clubs that will help you. We have interviewers, you know, we'll get you set up with the right alumni connections. So week one, you'll be like, whoa, I have to have decided basically what track I want to be on in order to find an internship, which will then potentially lead to a full-time job. And I think a lot of people are shocked by that. Like if you're not prepared and you think, oh, how fun, a 2-week break from work, or like, oh, it's COVID, I'm going to take a 2-week break from life and find myself. I would spend the summer before your MBA doing some really hard thinking and research about how you want to best utilize your program, or it's a bit of a rude awakening. So that's a very practical piece of advice. My more general philosophical advice, it's interesting. I come at this from a little bit of a different perspective as a joint policy degree person. So for me, it was never a question of whether I would do something that was mission driven and that I would be passionate about and wake up every day feeling like, you know, life is short and I need to be contributing to societal problems of our era. And that's obviously never been more clear than now. I think most of us recognize that we are at an unprecedented time in the world, both in public health crisis, economic crises, social justice crises, and we want to contribute to that. And that was the policy side of me. Like policy school prepared me to think about technocratically how I would want to be skilled up to contribute to those problems. What business school taught me, for some of these people on this call might actually not be sure if they want to apply to business school or some other kind of school or just stay in the workplace. And my advice about business school and how to utilize that to find your next step is business school taught me that it was sort of, I had this erroneous picture before business school that the jobs that I choose should be derived from and predominantly propelled by like the mission statement of the organization or company. Like as long as I find a place that's doing something that sounds really exciting, I'm going to be happy working there. Nope, that is not the case. Business school taught me that I need to think about what my day-to-day job is and what I am adding to that company. You know, you can work for the Red Cross organization, are you the president? Are you the comptroller? Are you the janitor? Are you the person who is, giving out supplies? Who are you? What is it that is actually your day-to-day job? I think so frequently we don't even bother to like fully understand what the role is that we're waking up to do every day until after we get there. And that's what happened to me with consulting. I alluded to this. I thought to myself, oh, I'll join a social sector consulting firm. It's my way of squaring the circle of being the MBA and the public policy person. Great. What I didn't realize was I would spend every day advising people. I'm absolutely not trying to say anything bad about consulting. I'm actually trying to convey that you've got to think about the match of the role with your own strengths. And for me personally, I am an executor by nature. I spent like my entire pre-MBA career creating things from nothing in a very resource constrained setting and making stuff happen, like GSD, get stuff done. That's my motto in life. If I'm not getting stuff done, I am a very unhappy camper. So there I was, like management consultant, super nice job, super nice salary, super nice clients, working for Rockefeller Foundation. I would give them a strategic plan and then be like, bye, I guess I'll never figure out if you did this plan or not. I was not in the room for the execution. And for me, that was horrible, And so I realized, wow, I am the doer. And so I learned so much about myself in the MBA that helped me, somewhat belatedly, but the lessons definitely applied, helped me understand what are my actual strengths? What can I offer to a specific role that will allow me to shine? And that's how I got into operations. And that quickly led me to more career mobility and a faster trajectory to now the C-suite than I ever would have achieved if I had stayed in a very nice, cushy job as a consultant. And just the final shout out is, I think Yale SOM is one of 2 programs in the United States that offers a course called Interpersonal Dynamics. And it's called Touchy Feely at Stanford. That's the place where it originated. Yale SOM has a world-class faculty that offers this course. That course changed my life. For like every conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I now lead people operations and our organization's response to social justice and equity issues within ID Insight. Everything Lindsay said about like intention is not the same as impact. I learned that viscerally in that course. I learned about how to lead people, like be an executive leader and understand when, that the personal is not different from the professional. There's the professional, there's the personal and the private. You don't have to bring the private to work, but you do have to bring the personal to work. And work is very personal. And if you don't understand that and you don't understand how to lead with empathy, you won't survive as a leader in business and society. Exactly like what Tony said. I mean, here to everything Tony said. So IPD was life-changing. And I think many alumni say that it was one of the best investments they made with their time in business school. I can't imagine going to a business school that didn't have IPD. I can't imagine going to Yale and not taking IPD. It is worth every single point that you pay or whatever bid to get into that course. And it was great. It was great lessons for me that I use today.
Thank you so much, Becca. And I can say more than any other course I have known of at this institution or any other institution, more alumni and students say to me about interpersonal dynamics than anything else. Exactly what you said, that it has completely changed who they are in the world. It changes their abilities to lead and to show up and to be conscious about who they are in those spaces in ways that multiply their effectiveness and change their lenses on relating to other people forever. And so I want to underscore that point in particular. Heidi Brooks, who leads that course, is in just a complete genius, I think, at transforming people's ability to lead and to understand themselves and others through the work that she does in that course. I want to turn to Yuli, but I have to forgive me for one moment because Yuli mentioned in his introduction the work that he did to start an organization that was designed to help military families transition to civilian life. And so, hold on one moment because. Yuli, I have my hat from that organization and from a period of time where we had lots of conversations about SUVCOM and the work that you were doing there. And that I look at that every single day that I'm here. And I don't know if you knew that, but there it is. So I wanted to turn to you next with a question about how, we're all on Zoom. It's a great benefit to be able to have alumni, coast to coast together with us tonight as a result of that. But obviously, it's had far more difficult impact than positive. And I'm wondering, how has the pandemic impacted your career? And how has Yale prepared you for your post-pandemic experience as you think about the path you're on and the path ahead?
Yeah, so I'm in sales, and so I'm in sales at Salesforce, and the last time I was ever in the Salesforce building was when I interviewed. The day I was supposed to start was the day they no longer let people get to work and come into the buildings, and we were, stuck at home. And in sales, there's a saying: there are no earthquakes. You have a quota, and you are expected to deliver that quota. And no one's really concerned that there's a global pandemic. Find a way to make it happen. And sales is a social business. A lot of people buy from who they trust and who they know. And so I had my patch, which is Southern California, from LA down to San Diego. And I was expecting people to give me a lot of money and never have met them at all. And the best thing I could do was reach out to them with a clever email or a Zoom or a Google Hangout. So it made me and the entire organization. So Salesforce, is a very big organization. Like most sales organizations, a lot of resources are put into establishing personal relationships. So taking people to games and golfing and all these other sorts of things. And what that is just an opportunity to connect with them and get aligned and say, what's important to you? And the reason you do that is because phone calls, emails don't cut it. Sometimes in order to build that trust and relationship that allows you, a seller and a buying company, to get to a closed deal, you need a little more time to do that, right? Well, that was just tough. And it was tough for everyone at Salesforce because they were used to all of that activity, and that got pulled back for everyone. So how did my time at Yale help prepare me for this moment? And I'm very pleased to say that I am number one on my team in terms of quota because I learned at Yale how to adapt, and just like, okay, things are different now. And one of the things that I loved was the raw case. I don't know if you still do them now, but the raw case, for folks that don't know about them, it's very different from the typical case. So the typical case would be 2 pages, very well outlined for you, all the key points that you needed to know. And that would allow you sufficient information to go off and make a business decision. The raw case was just this flood of a bunch of information. And part of the activity was figuring out what was important, being able to make a decision, and then defend that decision should you be called on by someone in class. And that is the skill that you need in life. In a pandemic, okay, I'm now in a new job. There's a lot of information, 20 years of history, customers, an outdated industry. How do I prioritize who I'm going to reach out to? What are the conversations I'm going to use to demonstrate, one, that I actually care not only about making the sale, but I care about their business. I care about their patients. I'm not just another salesperson that's going to come to them and sell them something that they don't need. And I can talk intelligently about things that are listed in their annual report and how we can help them achieve the goals that they've put out on the website. So I think one of the great things that I learned at Yale was making connections and doing the work to show that I actually do care about what my customers care about, coming to them with a point of view that says, hey, if I were in your shoes, here's what I would do. And that takes a lot of the work off of them to feel like they don't have to educate yet a new salesperson that's coming into their patch. And then also recognizing, we have a phrase here at Salesforce, which is to lead with empathy. The pandemic is hard for everyone. There are very few people that are thriving, yay pandemic. Like 2020 is hitting everybody hard. And so recognizing that when you have meetings with them and their kids run by behind them, that's okay. No need to apologize. We're all family. And those are the types of activities that allow people to feel like, I feel that I would be safe, going to my organization and saying that we should give Salesforce and Yule some of our business. And that allows me to succeed in what it is I'm doing.
That is terrific. And I will say, Yuli has, and through the conversation, there have been references to the curriculum and to raw cases. So our curriculum is built around a number of perspectives with the understanding that in any of the kinds of roles you'll go on to for the rest of your career after you're at Yale, one of the things you have to be absolutely comfortable with and expert in is how do you take all the various hats that investors, competitors, employees, or the workforce, the innovator within your organization, what are their perspectives on any number of decisions that you might be facing, and how do you think in a systematic way through that so that your decisions, your actions are shaped much more powerfully by that. And part of how we do that is we kind of, dive into the deep end quickly in the first year with these raw cases, which rather than being all the information's there in tables, it's all quite, nice and tidy, we give you, links to data sets that have all the financials for that organization, interviews with the managers or employees or executives in that organization, press, other data, and it's too much to really even analyze all of it. And so what quickly has to happen is you have to get really good at what Yuli's talking about, which is what kind of space am I in? What sort of decision am I trying to make? What's the essential information? It may not even be there. You may have to request it. And what that prepares our students for, and again, we've heard this over the years, is they're far more comfortable, they find, than their peers from other MBA programs, being kind of put into ambiguous situations where it's not clear what it is that the company or the organization needs to have happen or expects to have happen. And that's something I think we're particularly proud of here as a school, not just that we've taken that approach, but how well our students have gone into that with us, fully embraced it, and gotten really good at building out what were in some cases already quite strong skill sets, but really building very strong skill sets and appreciation for that approach to the world. I want to go to, and I promise this, I feel like for the last while, to all of you who are here with us listening, a question that has come in that I want to turn to the panel is, how has the DEI conversation at Yale evolved over the years, and what do you think is still missing? From your perspective as an alumni, you've all graduated in different eras. It's one of the things that is so exciting about bringing this group together. And so I'll just throw that out there for whoever wants to take that on first.
I can start. So when I was at Yale, I led, I think in my second year, the Black Business Association, the BBA. And I'm pretty sure our class was one of the smaller classes. Amy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we were like at 180 students, something like that. And I think there were maybe 6 or 10 at most Black students in the class. I think Yale, frankly, just can do better in terms of numbers and getting more of students into the school. I think a lot of that comes from just meeting them where they are and going where they are and saying, you too belong at Yale. It's not a place that's not for you. And that does take a lot of work, right? Like that's a lot of leaving New Haven and going to wherever we think students of color happen to be. I think my second year was the first year that MLT wound up, started bringing students. And so there's definitely, and consortium started coming, I think, soon after that. So it's very clear that Yale is making steps in the right direction. But I don't remember us having events like these, you know, even if it wasn't on the webinar. But yeah, I think, you know, just from what I'm seeing, there is, you know, progress in the right direction, but we definitely have a step to go in terms of just getting those numbers up to being where it's like, okay, yeah, you know, 13% of the population at this school is Black students. And I don't know if we are there, but I just don't think that we are.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, Tony?
Yeah, I'll just speak to some of the more recent investments and activities. So it's a great question. I think it's a question that you really should be pushing to us and to all the business schools. I think all the schools have ways to go in this particular area, but the one way I try to evaluate these type of scenarios is by looking at the investments. And from an SOM standpoint, there's been 4 things that you can look at, which are pretty concrete, that will tell you that we're moving in the right direction. First and foremost, there's now a full staff around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So SOM has made the strategic decision to really invest in that office. So when I was in school not too long ago, we really had 1 person staffed against that. Now we have a few people and a growing staff dedicated to that particular area, which has also expanded scope. Partnership with Consortium MLT is a major partnership. So that's step 2. And it's not only that, we're also have partnerships with Twigo and other very fantastic diverse organizations. Within those partnerships, obviously the school commits to give scholarships. It creates opportunities for people to gain employment. And it's a very strong, concrete intentional decision to really lean into D&I that a lot of schools have not done. The third thing that I would say, which is a very important thing, and it's a really, really important signal, is our new president. So our new dean, I should say, Dean Charles. Dean Charles has a career really built in this particular industry, looking at equity, inclusion from an economic standpoint. And from my understanding, he's really charged the school to really look into this area as well. So there's been a lot of conversations that he's had with the students, with the staff, on how we can really, really improve in that particular vector. And I would say the last thing is that we are seeing growing numbers. The numbers when I was at SOM, think of the 200 or so students that we had in our class, we had around 30 or 40 consortium students. Of that, around 33 to 40% were Black. The year after me, so Becca's year, we had a substantially larger class. And I know that it's probably had ups and downs, but what you can see is definitely an upward trend, an upward trajectory, and that comes to a commitment to this particular issue.
Can I just add that the quality is also important, not just the quantity? And maybe this is sort of a little bit blunt to say, the quality of the people that I met in consortium was literally mind-blowing. It was like Yale put their money where their mouth is. And these were people that we stole from Stanford GSB, like Cliff Emanuel in my class, 2015. Got into Stanford GSB. Yale was like, here's a bunch of money, come here. And he came to Yale. All of the other friends that I have from consortium, we are talking like some of the best students of color in any MBA program. Seriously, I would put us against Harvard. I would put us against Stanford, because those people got scholarships and they came to Yale. And so the caliber of people, not just the number, I'd say, was also incredible.
Yeah, I want to add, I'll be quick so we can get to another question, but I was the first consortium class, and I will say that was a huge, it was a huge way to help create community, because I knew, to Yuli's point, the numbers were very small in the years before, and it's very hard to create a community when you're talking about 5 or 6 people who were all very different people. You don't automatically create community just because you're all Black or brown, or, you know, care about the issues that affect those people. And it can be really tough and awkward. But, you know, we had regular engagements with Dean Oster at the time, like throughout my whole time there. She was very focused on, love her, very focused on how's it going? How's the experience? How can we be making it better? And so there's constant attention to it and constant attention for how to get it right, and the evolution of the diversity and inclusion as a department and area of focus for the administration is there. And the other thing I will say is, on the other end, because one of my really good friends from school who was in that consortium class with me, Rosanna Goss, has spent a lot of time working with the alumni office in figuring out how to more deliberately engage alumni of color, particularly once they get older. And, you know, we all have different priorities and things we're juggling in our careers and at home, and you're looking for a more meaningful way to engage with the university than just particularly giving money. Like, you want maybe to have your contribution go to a particular thing. You want to be able to influence the curriculum and things of that nature that are a little bit more high touch, not as high touch as what Tony's doing on the advisory board, for example, but just looking for deeper ways to engage and aid in that process of making the experience for students of color better. So it's not perfect. It's a learning curve for everybody. But there's the effort, and that matters.
That's terrific. And I will say, for me personally, one of the most exciting times of my career, period, but my time here at Yale, was being on the Dean Search Committee with a handful of other faculty, and we partner with alumni and students and staff in that process. But to have Kerwin Charles, our dean, come to the school, given his research, given what, you know, to your point, what he had built his career around, and we're meeting weekly about, you know, things I can't yet talk about that, you know, there are plans, you know, in motion that are truly exciting and really, I think, speak to the continuation and the acceleration of this commitment that the school has, which I'm really, really very excited about. And so with that, I think I should turn it over to Kristen, who is going to make some closing remarks and take us home. I want to, before I do that, say just my great gratitude and thanks to the alumni who have joined us this evening for your insights and your candor, your ability to capture so beautifully what it was to be here and what it's meant to you on the paths that you've taken since that time. It makes me miss you all the more, and to not be able to wait until you're back some May or before for a reunion back on campus with us. And thank you for taking the time and being here with all of us. So Kristen, over to you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Amy, for the flawless moderation of that and pulling out kind of the key pieces. And thank you so much to the panelists. I know most of you already, and now I feel like I know all of you, and I can't wait to keep engaging. I learned so much more tonight, and thank you for answering the questions in the chat and just being authentic and candid and thoughtful and caring. And you all are really the epitome of the mission of the school management. So really proud to sit through this hour with you all. And for the prospective students listening, we hope that this was helpful for you all in your journey. We have recorded this. We will send out the recording afterwards, and we can send out contact information for more ways to engage with the school. We hope this isn't the end of the conversation. So thank you with that, and we will give everyone a good night. Great to see you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.